Welcome back to the deep dive. I was in a coffee shop the other day, and I was sort of just watching people, and I had this really weird moment of cognitive dissonance.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because on my laptop screen, I had this article open about, quantum mechanics, hard physics, fields, the absolute bedrock of reality. And then at the table right next to me, these two people were having this incredibly earnest conversation about energy and vibes and feeling connected to the universe.
Ah, the classic juxtaposition, the lab coat versus the, let's say, tie-dye shirt.
Exactly. And, I feel like I live in that tension. Most of us do, right? These two worlds feel completely and totally incompatible.
For sure. On one side, you have science with a capital S. It's all hard facts, biology, things you can measure, things that, frankly, don't care about your feelings.
Right. And then on the other side, you have this vague, often dismissed world of spirituality,
Yeah.
feelings of connection, of unity, the whole idea that we're all part of something bigger.
It's really the great divide of the modern mind, isn't it? We compartmentalize them. One is for the university lecture hall, and the other is for the yoga studio or maybe the poetry slam.
And we are told, pretty much implicitly, that they just don't talk to each other.
I'm not supposed to.
Right. And look, usually if someone starts talking to me about universal oneness or cosmic unity, my inner skeptic alarm just starts ringing so loud I can't hear anything else.
It sounds like a bumper sticker.
It sounds like a hippie slogan. It sounds like wishful thinking. But, and this is the huge but that we are really going to unpack today, the stack of research you've pulled together suggests that my skepticism might actually be, well, scientifically outdated.
And that is the hook. That is the whole provocation we're diving into. What if that feeling of unity isn't just a nice sentiment? What if science and spirituality are, in fact, describing the exact same structural reality, just using different vocabularies?
That is the premise we're exploring. We're calling this deep dive the structural architecture of universal interdependence, which I have to admit sounds incredibly fancy.
It is a mouthful, I'll give you that. But
Yeah.
I think it's necessary to use that kind of precise language because we are not talking about mysticism here.
No.
We are not talking about crystals or horoscopes or even moral idealism, really. We're going to look at evolutionary biology, cognitive neuroscience, quantum physics, systems theory,
Hard stuff.
the hard stuff. And what we're going to find is that the oneness that poets and mystics have talked about for centuries is actually a biological and physical fact.
It's structural realism.
Precisely. It's moving away from poetic metaphor to the hard evidence.
Okay, so let's lay out the roadmap for everyone. We have a monster stack of sources today. We are talking Lynn Margulis on evolutionary biology.
A true revolutionary.
We've got the heavy hitters of neuroscience in Emil Seth and Daniel Kahneman. We're also going way back to classic philosophy with Spinoza and the Stoics.
Can't forget them. And we'll even touch on quantum field theory, just to ground it all. And then we'll wrap it up with some sociology from Emil Durkheim.
It's a seriously eclectic group.
It is, to say the least. But the thesis that binds them all together is, well, it's radical. It's that modern society has somehow forgotten an ancient, intuitive understanding of unity, but modern science is now, piece by piece, rebuilding that very same understanding. Only this time, it's relying on hard data.
So let's start with the foundation. Let's call it the hardware. If we're going to make this claim that interdependence is physically real, we have to start with the planet and our own bodies.
Nuts and bolts.
Exactly. And this brings us to one of my absolute favorite biological concepts, because it completely upends how we're taught to think about evolution.
You must be talking about the shift from what I'd call the gladiator narrative to the network narrative.
Right. We all know that phrase, survival of the fittest. It's just, it's burned into our brains.
Oh, absolutely.
We usually attribute it to Darwin, and we interpret it to mean that life is basically a cage match. Every man for himself, every organism for itself. But the research from Lynn Margulis paints a completely, radically different picture.
Lynn Margulis was a giant. I mean, she was a total rebel in evolutionary biology, and for a very long time, she was just ignored. Ostracized, even.
For this one idea, right?
For this one huge idea. She championed the concept of endosymbiosis, and her core argument is just devastating to that gladiator narrative. She said, and this quote is amazing, life did not take over the globe by combat, but by networking.
By networking. That sounds like something you'd hear at a Silicon Valley boardroom, but she's talking about ancient bacteria, isn't she?
She is talking about the fundamental architecture of your cells. I mean, think about the cells in your own body right now. They're complex cells. They're called eukaryotes. They have a nucleus. They have all these little organelles doing jobs.
Yeah, the stuff from high school biology class.
Right, the mitochondria, all that. Margulis showed that these didn't just evolve through slow, gradual mutation alone. That wasn't the whole story. They were the result of a merger.
A merger, like
Yeah.
a corporate merger.
Almost exactly like that. Or maybe a hostile takeover that eventually turned into a marriage. Eons ago, we're talking about 2 billion years back, a large single-celled organism swallowed a smaller bacterium.
So it tried to eat it.
It tried to eat it for lunch, but for some reason, the digestion failed. The little bug survived inside the big one.
I can't imagine that felt very good.
I'm sure it was uncomfortable for a while, but then something absolutely incredible happened. They sort of struck a deal. The little bug, the bacterium, it was really good at processing oxygen to create huge amounts of energy.
More efficient.
Way more efficient. And the big bug was good at protection, at moving around and finding food. So they effectively decided to cooperate. They integrated.
And that little bug became the mitochondria.
That little bug became the mitochondria, the power plants in every single one of your cells. And it's the same story for chloroplasts in plants. They were once independent organisms too.
They were separate creatures with their own DNA.
Yes. And that's the smoking gun. They still have their own DNA today. Your mitochondria have their own separate genome passed down from your mother, completely distinct from the DNA in your cell's nucleus.
That fact just blows my mind every single time I hear it. It means that at the most fundamental level of my biology, I'm not an individual in the way I think I am.
You're a colony.
I am a walking community. I am the result of a peace treaty between ancient enemies.
You are a walking, talking testament to the power of cooperation. And the implication here is massive for evolution. It means that complexity life, getting smarter, bigger, more capable, it requires integration. You can't just compete your way to complexity. You have to cooperate your way there.
And this is where we need to kind of vindicate Charles Darwin a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We so often blame him for that survival of the fittest, hyper-individualist mindset. But you found some notes from his later work, The Descent of Man, where he argues something very different.
He gets a really bad rap, mostly because of social Darwinism, which was a political ideology that came much later and twisted his ideas.
Right, people co-opting his work.
Totally. But in his own writings, specifically when he was talking about human evolution, he argued that communities with the most sympathetic members would flourish best.
Sympathetic member. So he meant cooperative.
Yeah.
Empathetic.
Exactly. He recognized that for a social species like us, being a selfish jerk was actually a terrible survival strategy in the long run.
If you can't integrate with your group, if you can't build trust, you get kicked out. You die.
Your genes don't get passed on. So cooperation itself is a survival strategy. Relational integration improves the stability of the entire system. And that right there is just a biological fact.
Okay, so that's the micro level. Our own cells are cooperatives. But let's zoom out now. Let's go to the macro level, the Earth itself. This is where we get into the Gaia hypothesis.
James Lovelock. And this is another one of those concepts that often gets dismissed as woo-woo or, mystical.
Because of the name, right? Gaia was a Greek goddess.
Exactly. But Lovelock wasn't a mystic. He was an atmospheric chemist, a hard scientist. He wasn't talking about a conscious goddess. He was talking about a cybernetic system.
A self-regulating system. The analogy you used in the notes was a thermostat.
It's a perfect analogy. Or think about your own body. Your body maintains a constant temperature of around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. When you get hot, you sweat to cool down. When you get cold, you shiver to generate heat.
It's a feedback loop.
A constant, unconscious feedback loop. Lovelock's big idea was that the Earth acts as a single self-regulating physiological system. The biosphere, all the living things. And the atmosphere, the oceans, the soil. They are all coupled together in these massive planetary scale feedback loops.
The examples in your research were fascinating. The one about the ocean plankton really stuck with me.
The seal law hypothesis is just brilliant. So you have these microscopic organisms in the ocean, phytoplankton.
Little tiny plants, basically.
Basically. And when they get stressed out by too much sunlight, too much UV radiation, they release a particular chemical. It's called dimethyl sulfide.
Okay, just a waste product for them.
That's what we used to think. But this chemical floats up into the atmosphere, and up there, it oxidizes and forms these tiny sulfate particles. And these particles act as cloud condensation nuclei.
Meaning they help clouds form.
They are the seeds for clouds. Water vapor needs something to cling to in order to form a droplet. These particles are the perfect something.
So wait, you're saying the stressed out plankton are literally making their own shade?
Yes. They make clouds. And what do clouds do? They're white, so they reflect sunlight back into space.
Which cools the surface of the ocean.
Exactly. It cools the planet and reduces the stress on the plankton. It is a planetary thermostat, and it's being regulated by microscopic bugs in the sea.
That is just, it's wild. It completely reframes this idea of cosmic unity. It's not a spiritual feeling anymore. It's a systems coupling idea.
That's it. It's not that the Earth has a spirit in some ghostly sense. It's that the Earth has a metabolism. It's a coherent physiological system.
And this brings us right to Ludwig von Bertalanffy and what he called general systems theory. He has that famous quote, "The whole is more than the sum of its parts."
We hear that phrase all the time. It's almost a cliche, but we rarely stop to think about what it actually means in this context.
So break it down for us.
It means that things only exist meaningfully in relation to other things. Their identity is defined by their connections. Think about a human heart. If you take a heart out of a body and you put it on a table, is it still a heart?
I mean, technically, yes.
Yeah.
It's made of the same muscle tissue and cells, but functionally, no. It's just a lump of meat. It can't do anything.
Exactly. Its heartness, its function, its purpose, its very reality as a heart is defined by its relationship to the lungs, the blood, the brain, the whole system. A brain outside of a system isn't a mind. A neuron on its own isn't thought.
Nothing exists meaningfully in isolation.
Nothing. Interdependence isn't just a nice way to live, it's ontological.
Okay, ontological. That's a big philosophy word.
It is. Ontology is just the study of being, of what is real. To say interdependence is ontological means it's part of the fundamental nature of existence. To be is to be related. There is no other way to be.
And just to really hammer this point home,
Yeah.
let's go to the ultimate level of hardware. Let's go to cosmology. We have to quote Carl Sagan.
You have to. We're made of star stuff.
It's the classic line. It's on posters in every science classroom. But I think for a lot of people, it still sounds like a metaphor. But when you really drill down into the astrophysics of it, it is shockingly literal.
It is literal material continuity. There's no poetry there. It's just physics. Think about the atoms in your body right now. The carbon that makes up your muscles, the iron in your blood, the nitrogen in your DNA.
Okay.
None of those heavy elements existed at the beginning of the universe. The Big Bang produced almost exclusively hydrogen and helium, the light stuff.
So where did the rest come from?
It had to be forged. It was cooked in the crushing heat and pressure of stellar cores inside massive, massive stars. Those stars spent billions of years fusing lighter atoms into heavier ones, hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, and so on.
So they were cosmic ovens.
The original nuclear reactors.
Well,
But for that material to get out, to be available for planets and people, the star had to die.
it had to explode.
In a supernova, one of the most violent events in the universe. That explosion is what scattered all that forged material, the carbon, the nitrogen, the oxygen, the iron across the galaxy.
And that cloud of stardust eventually became us.
That cloud of dust and gas eventually collapsed under gravity to form a new solar system and a planet, and eventually through billions of years of evolution, it became you.
So quite literally, I am a walking, talking collection of recycled nuclear waste from a long-dead star.
You are the transformed output of ancient stars. There is a direct, unbroken material line from the heart of a star to your bloodstream. And if you go even deeper, if you look at modern physics and quantum field theory, the idea of separation gets even thinner.
This is the idea that particles aren't really solid objects, right?
Exactly. We tend to think of the world in a Newtonian way. We think of atoms like little billiard balls or tiny marbles bouncing around in empty space.
No, things that avoid.
Right. But quantum field theory, which is our most successful model of reality, suggests that's wrong. It suggests that the fundamental reality isn't particles, it's fields.
Fields, like a magnetic field.
Yeah. Sort of, but even more fundamental. Imagine the entire universe is a vast, calm ocean. That ocean is the field like an electron field, a photon field, etc. An electron isn't a separate little ball floating in the water. The electron is a wave in the water, an excitation of the field.
And you can't take the wave out of the water. The wave is the water.
You can't. The wave is just the water behaving in a certain way in a certain place. In this view, matter is just patterned energy. Everything is continuous. The separation we perceive between this particle here and that particle over there is, well, it's a bit of an illusion. It's all just ripples in the same pond.
Okay, so let's try to summarize this first massive section on the hardware. Biologically, we are merged bacteria. We're walking cooperatives.
Ecologically, we are an inseparable part of a planetary metabolism.
Cosmologically, we are recycled stardust.
And physically, we are just excitations of a single, unified quantum field.
So interdependence is an ontological fact. It is the literal hardware of reality, which begs the absolute biggest question of all. If we're so fundamentally, structurally, physically connected, why do we feel so separate? Why do I walk around feeling like me, trapped inside this bag of skin, totally distinct from you and the chair and the rest of the world? Why don't I feel like a ripple in the ocean?
This is the crux of the entire problem, isn't it? If the hardware is unity, then the software must be separation. And that brings us to section 2, the cognitive distortion.
Why we don't feel united.
Precisely. And the answer, according to modern neuroscience, lies in the bizarre way our brains actually process reality. We have to talk about the brain as a prediction engine.
This comes from the work of the neuroscientist Emil Seth. And I have to say, this concept really shook me when I first read it. His core idea is this. We don't just passively perceive the world, we actively generate it.
It's a complete 180 from how we intuitively think perception works. We have this folk theory that our eyes are like transparent windows, or maybe like video cameras.
Yeah, the lens opens, light comes in, and the brain prints a perfect, accurate photo of what's out there.
Right. But Seth points out that's impossible. Your brain is locked in a dark, silent, bony vault. It's locked in your skull. It never sees light, it never hears sound, it never smells anything. All it ever gets are ambiguous electrical impulses.
So it's trapped in a bunker, and it's just receiving Morse code from the front lines.
That is a perfect way to put it. And from that ambiguous stream of Morse code, it has to guess what's causing it. So the brain isn't a passive receiver, it's a prediction machine. It is constantly, actively anticipating what is out there based on all its past experiences.
So it's not seeing, it's guessing.
It projects a model of the world, a hallucination, really, and then it just uses the incoming sensory data to check and correct the errors in its guess.
So when I'm looking at you right now, I'm not actually seeing you. I'm seeing my brain's best guess of you based on every other time I've seen a person.
You are experiencing your own internal controlled hallucination that is being recalibrated by sensory data in real time. That's what Seth calls it. Controlled hallucination.
Which means that distortion isn't a bug in the system, it's the default condition. We don't see reality as it is. We see a user interface that's been shaped by evolution to help us survive.
That is the key analogy, the user interface. Think about your computer desktop. You see a little blue folder icon. You know that if you click on it, it will open and show you your files.
Right.
Simple. But is there an actual physical blue folder inside your computer?
No, of course not. Inside the computer, it's just, I don't know, magnetic states on a hard drive, flows of electricity through silicon. It's incredibly complex.
Exactly. The blue folder is a convenient lie. It's an icon that hides all that complexity so you can get work done. If your computer showed you the raw reality, the billions of zeros and ones, the voltage shifts, you couldn't use it. It would be overwhelming.
And in evolutionary terms, getting work done just means staying alive and passing on your genes.
Exactly right. Imagine you're an early human walking through the jungle. If you saw the world as it truly is, the shimmering quantum interconnectedness of all things, the atomic void, the swirling fields of energy, you'd be completely mesmerized.
You'd be staring at the beauty of the universe.
And then you'd be eaten by a tiger.
So the brain simplifies drastically. It draws a very hard, very clear line. This is me. That is tiger. Run.
The brain has a very strong preference for coherence over accuracy. It wants a simple, stable story that it can act on quickly. This is where Daniel Kahneman's work comes into the picture. His famous line is, "What you see is all there is."
The W.I.S.C.I.T. principle. The brain substitutes the information it has for the information it needs. It builds a story from incomplete data.
It creates a simplified narrative. And who is the main character of that narrative?
Me, the ego.
The ego. Or, in modern neuroscience terms, the default mode network, the DMN.
The DMN. Let's unpack that a bit. It's not just a concept. It's a real physical network in the brain.
It is. It's a specific network of interacting brain regions. The medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, a few others. And what's fascinating is when it's active. It's most active when you aren't doing a specific, focused task.
It's what your brain is doing when you're just thinking. Daydreaming.
Yes, when you're daydreaming or ruminating about the past or worrying about the future or thinking about what other people think of you, it's the me network.
It's the storyteller.
It's the storyteller. It's the part of your brain that constructs the ongoing narrative of my life. I am this kind of person. I like this food. I hate that politician. Remember that embarrassing thing I did in 7th grade? It filters every single experience through the lens of this constructed identity.
So this powerful, persistent feeling of being a separate individual self isn't some fundamental truth of the universe that my brain is perceiving.
Right.
It's a cognitive construction being actively generated by the DMN.
A very useful construction. It helps us navigate complex social hierarchies and plan for the future. But it's a construction nonetheless. And this connects so beautifully to what ancient spiritual and philosophical traditions have been saying for millennia.
You mean when they talk about ego death or transcending the self?
Exactly. For a long time, we've thought of that as some kind of mystical, magical event. But from this neuroscientific perspective, what they were describing wasn't magic. They were describing cognitive decentering.
Which is what exactly?
It's a state where the default mode network temporarily quiets down through practices like deep meditation or sometimes with psychedelics. The me network goes offline for a bit. And in that quiet, the prediction engine stops constantly predicting me and my story, and it just experiences the raw sensory data of what is.
That is such a demystifying way to look at it. It's not about leaving reality. It's about finally seeing reality clearly without the me filter getting in the way.
It's like closing the blue folder icon for a moment and finally seeing the actual code running the machine.
And so many philosophers anticipated this idea long before we had brain scanners. You mentioned Socrates.
Socrates' famous line, "The unexamined life is not worth living." We usually hear that as a moral scolding, right? Like, you should read more philosophy books and be a better person.
But you're reframing it. You're saying it's an epistemic warning, a warning about knowledge.
Yes. It's a user manual for the human brain. If you don't examine your life, if you don't turn your attention inward and examine the lens through which you see everything, then you're living in a simulation created by your own biases. You're just running on autopilot.
Spinoza said something very similar, didn't he? About freedom and ignorance.
Spinoza was just brilliant on this. He said, we believe we are free because we are conscious of our actions, but we are ignorant of the causes that determine them.
We see the what, but not the why.
Exactly. We think, I chose to eat that cookie, but we don't see the whole causal chain. The dip in blood sugar, the dopamine craving from past experiences, the advertisement we saw an hour ago, the social pressure. We see the final action and invent a story about my choice.
And in Buddhism, this is called avidya, or ignorance.
But it's crucial to understand it's not ignorance as in stupidity. It's ignorance as in a structural misseeing. It's a fundamental bug in the software. It is the act of perceiving separation and solid things where there's actually only connection and process.
So wisdom, whether you get it from Socrates, Spinoza, or the Buddha, is essentially what you could call cognitive humility.
That's a great term for it. It's the ability and the willingness to question your own internal model of reality. It's the recognition that yourself is a filter, not the ground truth.
Okay, so this is a huge piece of the puzzle. We've established the hardware, we are physically fundamentally connected, and now the software, our brains, are programmed to generate a powerful illusion of separation. So that brings us to section 3, the architecture of interbeing. If the isolated self is a cognitive illusion, what actually exists?
That's the question, and the answer is relationships. Relationships exist. To really get this, we have to move away from an ontology of things and toward a relational ontology.
Okay, let's break that down again. Relational ontology. We said ontology is the study of what is real. So this means what is real is relationship.
Precisely. We are conditioned to think that the fundamental building blocks of reality are things. An atom is a thing. A chair is a thing. I am a thing. You are a thing. But a lot of philosophers like Martin Buber and Alfred North Whitehead argued that this is wrong. Reality is actually made of events and relationships, not static objects.
Martin Buber wrote that famous book, I and Thou.
He did. And in it, he argued that there is no such thing as an isolated I. The concept of I only appears in relation to something else. There is the I-it relationship, which is when I relate to an object, like this table. And then there's the I-thou relationship, when I relate fully to another being.
So my identity is co-constituted. I become me only because I am interacting with a you or an it.
Yourself is actualized only in relationship. It reminds me of the African philosophy of Ubuntu.
I am because we are.
It's the exact same insight. And Alfred North Whitehead, a philosopher and mathematician, took this idea even further, right down into physics. He developed something called process philosophy, where he argued that reality is made of process, not substance. His great line was, "The many become one and are increased by one. Everything is a flow of events integrating into new events."
But the best metaphor for this, and honestly the one that really helps me visualize it, comes from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, the sheet of paper.
It is the most beautiful and scientifically precise explanation of the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, or pratityasamutpada. He would hold up a simple sheet of paper in front of an audience and ask, "What do you see in this paper?"
And, casually, you see what you'd expect.
Yeah.
A flat white object made of wood pulp.
Right. The thing. But he asks you to look more deeply, to look at it structurally, and when you do, you see the tree. You cannot have the paper without the tree it came from.
And you can't have the tree without the rain that watered it, so the cloud is in the paper.
And you can't have the tree without the sunshine that fed it through photosynthesis. So the sun is in the paper.
And you need the logger who cut the tree down. And the logger needed to eat breakfast, which was made of wheat. So the wheat field is in the paper.
And the logger had parents who raised him. And they had parents. So all of his ancestors are in the paper.
It expands infinitely outwards.
Infinitely. And Thich Nhat Hanh's point is crucial. If you remove any one of those elements, if you remove the cloud from existence, the tree dies and the paper structurally cannot exist. If you remove the sun, the paper cannot exist. Everything in the cosmos has conspired together to make this simple sheet of paper possible.
His term for it was interbeing. He said, we inter-are.
We inter-are. And it's so important to understand that this is not poetry. It is a statement of causal reality. You cannot isolate the paper from the rest of the universe because the paper is the entire universe, just organized in the form of paper for a little while.
This connects directly back to systems theory, too. You mentioned the anthropologist Gregory Bateson.
Yes. Bateson said the unit of survival is organism plus environment.
Not just the organism.
Not just the organism. We have this individualistic bias where we think, I need to survive. But Bateson's point is that if an organism is so successful that it destroys its environment, it dies. The real unit of survival isn't the organism in isolation. It's the organism plus its context. A fish without water isn't a fish. It's a dead thing on a dock.
And modern cognitive science is now backing this up with something called the extended mind theory.
This is from the philosophers Andy Clark and David Chalmers. They argue, very convincingly, that the mind isn't just confined to what's inside the skull.
The mind leaks out.
It leaks out. It offloads. If you use a notebook to remember things, that notebook is a literal part of your memory system. If you use your smartphone to navigate a city, that phone is part of your cognitive process. When you use your hands to gesture while you talk to help you think, those gestures are part of your thinking.
So the boundary between self and world is permeable.
It's an arbitrary line we draw for convenience. The isolated self is an abstraction. The relational self is the physical and cognitive reality.
Wow. Okay, so we have this dense web of interbeing. We are the cloud in the paper. But this raises a very tricky and, for some people, a very uncomfortable question. If everything is connected and everything is caused by everything else, the cloud causing the paper, do I have any control? Do I have free will? Or am I just a puppet on strings made of sunlight and rain and ancestral trauma?
This is the hard pivot, and it leads us right into Section 4, the operating system, or, as we're calling it, enlightenment as necessity.
We have to talk about the illusion of control.
We do, and this is the point in the conversation where people often get very defensive, because the ego, the DMN, it loves the idea of control. The entire story of me is built on the premise that I am the captain of my soul.
I am the master of my fate.
Right. But if you take the science and the philosophy we've been discussing seriously, that entire claim starts to crumble.
Let's start with the Stoics, with Epictetus.
The Stoics were absolute masters of this. Epictetus opened his entire handbook, the Enchiridion, with a single ruthless distinction. He said, some things are up to us and some things are not up to us.
It sounds so simple, but then you read his list of what is not up to us, and it is shocking.
It's basically everything. Your body. Not up to you. It gets sick. It ages. It will die. Your reputation. Not up to you. People will think whatever they want to think about you. Your possessions. Not up to you. They can be taken away. The weather, the economy, global politics. Absolutely not up to you. They are all part of the vast causal chain of the universe.
So what on earth is left? What is up to us?
Only one thing. Your judgment. How you choose to interpret the data. Your internal assent to impressions. That's it. That's the entire sphere of your control.
So enlightenment, for a Stoic is just having crystal clarity about where that boundary lies.
Exactly. All human suffering, for a Stoic, comes from one single error: trying to control what is not yours to control. It's like kicking against the pricks of reality. You only hurt yourself.
And Spinoza, again, took this idea even further. He had that radical equation about God and nature.
Deus sive natura, God or nature. He used the terms interchangeably. For Spinoza, God wasn't some bearded man in the sky judging your sins. God was the infinite, necessary, logical system of existence itself. God was the laws of physics. God was the unbreakable chain of cause and effect.
And in that system, everything is determined. There's no room for chance.
Everything unfolds according to its own nature, according to causal law. There is no randomness. A stone falls because of the law of gravity. A person gets angry because of a combination of neurochemistry and external circumstance.
So where is the freedom in that? If I'm just a falling stone, how can I possibly be free?
That is the beautiful twist in Spinoza. He says freedom is not escaping from causality. That's impossible. Freedom is understanding causality.
His quote was, "The more we understand particular things, the more we understand God."
Or, to secularize it, the more we understand the system, the more we are in harmony with it. Think of it this way. Imagine you're driving a very old car, and all of a sudden the engine starts making this horrible, loud, grinding noise.
Okay.
Now, if you know nothing about cars, you panic, you get angry, you might kick the dashboard, you feel like a victim. Why is this happening to me?
I've definitely been that person. I am that person.
We all are. But now, imagine you are a master mechanic. You've spent your life studying engines, and you hear that exact same noise. You don't panic. You don't get angry at the car. You listen for a second. You say, the fan belt is slipping.
You understand the necessity of the noise. The noise is the inevitable result of a loose belt.
Precisely. And in that understanding, the emotional suffering disappears. You're no longer a victim of the car. You're a diagnostician of the system.
So freedom is understanding why you are angry or sad or anxious, seeing the chain of causes, the childhood trauma, the biological trigger, the social context, and in that seeing, you stop being a slave to the emotion.
You observe it. You say, the machine is doing that thing again. That's what happens when input X meets condition Y. It's a form of secular enlightenment. It's finding peace through a radical understanding of the system.
But does modern neuroscience actually support this pretty radical idea that we're driven by causes we don't consciously see?
Oh, overwhelmingly. We absolutely have to talk about the experiments of Benjamin Libet.
The Libet experiments. These are famous in neuroscience, and they're genuinely spooky.
Yeah. What Libet did was he hooked people up to an EEG machine to measure their brain activity, and he asked them to do something very simple. Just flex their wrist whenever they felt the urge to.
Okay.
And he measured 3 things. 1, the actual muscle movement in the wrist. 2, the moment in time when the person consciously felt they decided to move. And 3, the underlying brain activity leading up to it all. And the chronology, the timeline of those 3 things was the absolute shocker.
What he found was that the brain activity, a signal he called the readiness potential, started building up in the motor cortex a full second, sometimes 2 seconds, before the person was consciously aware of having made a decision.
Just pause and think about that. Your brain has already decided to move your wrist. It has started the engines. And then a whole second later, your conscious mind goes, hey, you know what? I think I'll move my wrist now.
So our conscious intention is often a post hoc narrative. It's a story we make up about why we did something after the brain has already initiated the action.
You've got it. We are like the White House press secretary who comes out to the podium after the president has already signed the executive order and then explains to the press why it was a very good and rational idea. But we're not the president. We're not in the Oval Office making the decision.
That is profoundly humbling.
It is, and it aligns perfectly with what the philosopher Martin Heidegger called thrownness, or Geworfenheit. His point was that we are thrown into existence. We don't choose to be born. We don't choose our parents or our genetics or our culture or the time period we live in. We just wake up in the middle of a movie that's already been playing for a long, long time.
So if we put this all together, the Stoics, Spinoza, Libet, Heidegger, what we're calling enlightenment isn't about gaining superpowers or transcending the world to go to some other dimension. It's about disciplined realism.
It is about aligning with reality as it is, rather than constantly fighting it with our preferred story. It's the profound realization that you are not a separate captain steering the ship. You are the ship and the ocean and the wind, all interacting as one process.
Okay, that is an incredibly deep idea, and honestly, it can be a little vertigo-inducing, but it can also feel a bit I don't know, lonely, or maybe just passive. If I'm just a part of this vast, determined system, what am I supposed to do? How do we live this understanding?
That's the perfect question, and it leads us directly into our final section, Section 5, the return, or collective reintegration.
Because if the whole point is we are all connected, then living it must mean reconnecting with others.
That's it. The return to this sense of unity isn't about going back to some primitive past. It's about reactivating a mode of cognition, a way of being that has gone dormant in our hyper-individualized modern society.
And to understand this, we have to bring in Emil Durkheim, one of the founding fathers of sociology. He had this wonderful term for it, collective effervescence.
It's a great term, bubbly. He was studying religious rituals in so-called primitive societies, totem worship, tribal dances, things like that. And he noticed that when people come together in these rituals, when they're singing the same song, dancing the same rhythm, chanting in unison, they enter a shared emotional state where the boundaries of the individual self just seem to melt away.
They feel like they're part of something larger than themselves.
Exactly. It's like being at a massive concert where everyone is singing along, or in a sports stadium when your team scores the winning goal. That feeling of electricity in the air.
You feel it as a single entity.
Right. And Durkheim's crucial insight was that this is not a supernatural experience. It is the social organism becoming perceptible to itself. It's the moment the group, the network, becomes aware of its own existence as a group.
So we are biologically wired to feel this. It's a human capacity.
It's a fundamental human capacity. And modern philosophy of mind actually has a name for this. It's called the we mode.
This is the distinction between the I mode and the we mode.
Yes. I mode is the default for us. I am walking to the store. You are walking to the store. We are two separate agents with individual goals. But we mode is different. It's we are taking a walk together. It's a state of joint intentionality. We are acting as a single unit of agency.
And there's actual hard science on why we need this, right? The social baseline theory.
This is the work of James Cone at the University of Virginia, and it's just fascinating. He argues that the human nervous system evolved to expect social proximity. Being with trusted others is our biological baseline state.
We aren't built to be alone. Solitary confinement is a form of torture for a reason.
Or a very deep biological reason. They did these fMRI studies where they would put a person in a brain scanner and threaten them with a mild electric shock. When the person is alone, their brain's threat response network, the amygdala, the anterior insula, it goes through the roof.
The world looks dangerous. The mountain looks steeper.
The brain is on high alert. But then they did a simple variation. They let the participant hold the hand of a trusted partner or friend while they were in the scanner.
And what happened?
The neural threat response dropped dramatically. The brain literally interpreted the threat as less painful and less scary, simply because they were physically connected to another person.
So isolation is metabolically expensive. It literally costs your brain more energy to be an individual than to be part of a connected pair or group.
Exactly. When you are alone, your brain has to do all the work of regulating your emotions, watching your own back, solving every single problem by yourself. That burns a ton of glucose. When you're in we mode, you offload a lot of that cognitive and emotional burden onto the group. It's load sharing for the brain.
Which means our modern hyper-individualistic culture, this idea that you have to be a self-made man, completely independent, needing no one, it goes directly against our biological baseline.
It is stressing us out and exhausting us, making us sick. We are trying to run a piece of software radical individualism that is fundamentally incompatible with our biological hardware, which is built for deep connection.
We are treating dependence as a moral weakness, when for our biology, it's our greatest survival strategy.
Writing our own structural architecture.
So where do we go from here? Because when you look around, you see so much fragmentation. Political polarization, ecological crisis, people screaming at each other on social media.
Right.
It really feels like we are further from the we mode than ever before.
It does feel that way. But complexity theory might offer a little bit of hope here. One of the principles of complex systems is that they tend to self-stabilize.
How does that work?
Well, when a system gets too fragmented, too chaotic, it creates instability. Entropy increases. It becomes inefficient and fragile. And that very instability eventually forces a reorganization. The system has to jump to a higher, more complex level of integration in order to survive.
So the chaos we are feeling right now, could it be the symptom of this system trying to correct itself, the birth pangs of a new level of organization?
It's plausible. The system humanity, the biosphere is under immense stress and it's trying to reorganize. You could see the global resurgence of systems thinking, the new urgency around ecological awareness, the renewed focus on community, even the widespread hunger for what people call spirituality. You could see all of these not as fads, but as a deep structural correction.
We're trying to find our way back to the we mode because the I mode is failing.
We are remembering what we actually are.
Wow. Okay, let's try to pull all of these threads together. Let's do the grand synthesis. We have covered a massive amount of ground today.
Let's recap the whole journey. It really does come full circle.
All right. First, we started with biology. We are physically networked. Lynn Margulis taught us that we are cooperative colonies of ancient bacteria. Our very cells are the result of a merger, a peace treaty.
Second, we went to cognition. Our feeling of separation is a brain-generated bias. Anil Seth and Daniel Kahneman showed us that the self is a useful prediction, a story our brain tells itself to survive. It's a controlled hallucination.
Third, we looked at ontology, the nature of being. We exist only in relation. Martin Buber and Thich Nhat Hanh showed us that the paper contains the cloud. You cannot be you without the entire universe as other. Fourth, we dove into philosophy. Wisdom is the acceptance of necessity. The Stoics and Spinoza taught us that true freedom isn't escaping the causal web, but deeply understanding our place within it. And finally, we ended with sociology and neuroscience. We are metabolically built for connection. Durkheim and Cohen showed us that our brains and nervous systems function best, or least stressed, when we operate in the we mode.
It's a complete, coherent picture. And what it shows is that the great divide between spiritual unity and scientific realism is an illusion. It's an artifact of dualistic thinking. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of both.
Ancient traditions encoded this deep, relational reality in myth and metaphor. Modern science has rediscovered that exact same reality through data and experiment, but it's the same truth.
We are not separate. We never were.
That is the ultimate takeaway. But as always, I want to leave everyone listening with a final provocative thought to chew on. Something to take with you.
Consider this. We spend almost our entire lives trying to become something. We want to become successful, become enlightened, become a better person, become happy. We treat our life as a project of construction.
Right. It's the hamster wheel of self-improvement. We're always trying to build a better ego.
But if everything we've talked about today is true, if the self is just a filter, a cognitive tool that distorts reality to keep you safe, and if enlightenment is just the accurate calibration of your perception, then perhaps the goal of life isn't to become something new at all.
What is it then?
Maybe the goal is simply to stop doing something, to stop hallucinating that we are separate. What would your life look like right now, today, if you just stopped defending a story that doesn't actually exist? What if you just dropped the filter for a moment and let the reality of the connection rush in?
That is the question.
Yeah.
What would you do differently right now if you knew for a fact that you are the cloud in the paper?
That's where the real work begins.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the network.
Take care.